All right, welcome everyone to the Argo CD and Argo Rollouts community meeting. Remember, this is a CNCF sponsored project and act accordance to the CNCF guidelines. If you haven't already, go to the doc and add your name to the attendees list here. I posted in the chat there. So, today we got Blake Peterson to I almost mispronounced your name just because I've been joking for so long. Sorry, inside joke. So we've been working on first class support for OCI registries with Argo CD. So we've been working on this for a little bit. We got members from Red Hat, from Acuity, and also from Microsoft, kind of pitching in. And we have a build that is demoable now. We've been working at it for a while. I see Blake's crossing his fingers over there. So for those of you who don't know, OCI registries are like using container registry. I'm going to oversimplify it, but using container registries to store data, any sorts of data. In our case, it'll be manifests, Kubernetes manifests. And I think with that, Andy, I know you driven some of this. I don't know if you want to add any other color to it.
Try to do my best. So the idea behind this is, motivation from me is trying to get away from requiring the use of a Git repository to manage Argo CD content and be able to leverage a distributable way that has become more adopted in the open source and enterprise community these days. If we look at the AI ML space, you're seeing a lot of adoption of being able to store store content in OCI registries. And if you're a user of Homebrew, to be able to manage packages on a OS X environment, it actually uses OCI artifacts to be able to store and manage content. So it does this. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just leveraging technology that's being used across the board.
Awesome, thanks. So I guess with that, I'll hand it over to Blake, who's been working on this for a while, and to show you a demo and how it's going.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Andrew. So yeah, in short, we're basically been working on OCR for quite some time. I mean, it's been a while since it became drafted as a proposal in Argo CD. It's been a while yet longer for the actual implementation. So it's coming to a state where it's almost ready to kind of be at least. So the goal is for this to be merged in 2.14. Then whether if it will be merged in 2.14 or not remains to be seen. But it's the goal. It's been a long time coming, and it's been pretty much the triumvirate of me, Christian, and Andrew, along with a couple of folks from Microsoft that have been working on this. But it's not been obviously there's been it's been on and off efforts. But at least I can show you today what the idea is in the future. How we could actually use Argo CD for OCR content. So for that, let me share my screen. I don't know what's going on. Wait a sec. Yeah, okay. Let's hope that. Okay. Wait a sec. Zoom is. I might have to actually. Yeah, I had to quit repo. Sorry about that.
The old Microsoft thing, the Mac thing. Yeah, permissions. How's everyone's week going? Going good.
Does anyone have the issue?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can post the link if they want to see the story details.
Feedback as well. Let me grab that.
All right. Hopefully this will work better. This is my personal laptop, so this is my the QA laptop's different story. So you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Awesome. We can see it.
All right, perfect. So at this point we just have Argo CD running locally. I have a Docker repo which will become my substitute OCI repository for now, but this would be for any OCI compliant repository, this would work. I'll demonstrate a bit later of how this works with OCI Helm. But for now, let's just run this. So let's just kick this off. Now just log in, and we'll see that this is start from scratch. So from settings, we have repositories. Okay, there's obviously there's two. You'll notice that there are two. That there's a new OCI. There's a new type of repository. Let's just clear these ones for now. And there's so what we have is two different kinds of flavors of how OCI content's managed. So the gist of it is that in OCI there are layers. So there's different kinds of layer types, and we support. What the idea is that there's going to be two different kinds of layer types that are supported. So the part is that this is kind of abstracted for the most part from a user. So here I have a guest book. Doesn't have anything much. It just has two manifests here. We'll just do ORS push. The command is pretty simple. So basically, when you want to create OCI content, here you can just use ORS push, and then you point to the repo that you want to push, and then the actual content. So here, there's a bunch of content, here's extra metadata. So OCI has a notion of annotations. So there's some standard annotations which it can use, which I'll also show how it's displayed in Argo CD. Here it's nothing special, but so we can just push it here. Boom. So we have a guest book here, and at this point we don't have anything. And I will show how this works in terms of. So we have the old Argo CD application. So for this to actually work with OCI, the important part is here. So once a repo URL is prefixed with OCI as a protocol, this will basically tell so without going too deep into implementation details, but it will basically tell the repo server that this is an OCI content, and will basically use OCI clients to pull the manifests. And like with images in general, you can specify the revision. So in this case, there's only a latest tag here, but of course you can version tags however you like. This does support Semver. I'm not going to show this right now, but there's Semver supports for specifying OCI content. But let's show it. Do you see do you guys see the text? It's not too small.
It looks okay to me. I don't know if anyone. It's fine on your Goland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good. It looks good to me.
So here we're just going to apply the manifest here, OCI. It's going to fail because this actually requires authentication. So yeah, this actually has the guest book up and running. But we can set up an OCI repo. So here we have the new type OCI, and then as any other repo, we'll just say we have a super secure password here. We will set the hosts, or we'll set the repository URL here. So there is a new flag here, but this is only relevant for, so in this case, when I'm doing local development. So this will basically this will tell the repository to use HTTP instead of HTTPS, but in a real setting, this would never be toggled. It should never be. So, but we'll just verify that this works and connect. Let's just do a refresh here. Boom. So it gets synced to latest. So this is just prefix of the SHA. Well, actually, let's sync this so we can actually see that this has been synced. So this basically synced the application to my local K3D cluster. I'll show you the other side. But do you guys have any questions in the meantime?
I have one. So when you push the OCI registry, I know there's like ways to tag or provide metadata
Correct.
when you're doing like the ORAS push. So is there a specific way that's specific metadata that we have to add in order for this to work?
No, there's no specific metadata. I mean, it's optional. I mean, it's in this case, we can just go in here and see, like, here we have, yeah, I added in the ORS metadata, I added like a description, added the maintainers, source, but it's not mandatory, but it's always nice to, Gerald.
Hey, sorry, it took me a second to unmute there. I'm curious about from a webhook perspective. I mean, one of the benefits of using Git is any changes automatically will update Argo right away instead of having to rely on its polling. And most of the repositories out there, the OCI repositories, have webhooks of one sort or another support as well. Are there plans to integrate webhooks from OCI repositories into Argo CD as part of this, or is that a separate initiative, or not make sense at all from your perspective?
To be honest, I haven't looked into it. So
It is, Gerald, it is part of it. We are tracking that as one of the items.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, this will probably not make. I mean, there's a lot of OCI specific features which can be opened up, which will come at a later stage. But
Yeah, exactly. It's not part of Blake's initial set of work, but it's one that we'll be tracking as part of the entire effort.
Right. I'm assuming this will be like in an alpha beta initially when it gets released, right? Not GA right away.
No, definitely not.
Okay, thank you.
Michael.
I assume it's pretty straightforward, but do you have a full history and rollback experience for OCI right now?
In terms of rollback, I need to look into the rollback. But I mean, in terms of going between revisions, I mean, you can move forward between revisions. But in terms of the rollback action, I haven't actually looked into that specifically.
There's a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, there was a glitch that Argo was able to. Okay, yeah. When you created the initial application, it looked like Argo was able to find information about the resources. Was that a glitch? Or
that's a glitch because I had the namespace already up and running. I forgot to nuke the namespace before.
All right, makes sense.
Yeah.
So can actually move on to the next one because there's so in terms of OCI, the gist of it is that there's two ways. Well, there's going to be two ways because OCI images are built into concepted layers, but we've elected to keep this simple in Argo CD. So we only support having a single layer with the content itself. So this layer itself can be this content can itself be like the contents of a directory. So this is what Aura supports. There is no guarantee that this is supported by other implementations. So there's another way where we can basically get the content into Argo CD. I'll show this, and let me just check if there's. I'm pretty sure there's another namespace here which I haven't nuked. All right, let's just do that before. So we won't get this glitch now, at least. So actually, I prepared a tarball that is basically exactly the same thing as I showed you, but this is just a different variant of doing the same thing. So basically, the other way of doing it, which again, in OCI terminology, this is still a single layer, but in this case, it just contains a single file, which is the guestbook tarball. But we can do the same thing here. Boom. And likewise, we're going to have issues. I will show you the other. In terms of manifest, it doesn't vary. There's no real difference. I mean, in the end of the day, from an OCI perspective, it's just a different repository. And let's just demonstrate this as well. So create another one. This one fails because we can't actually. The credentials here aren't set up, but we'll just set this up quickly. we'll do the same thing here. Bam. Same super secure password here.
Do you have the credential templates working as well for OCI?
Yes, that does work. I can show that in a later stage, but yes, in conceptually it's more or less the same thing. So it's same thing here. Let's just refresh this. Boom, and you'll see that this is auto synced. So, oh, we got the applications here. So we have two separate namespaces, exact same app, pretty more mundane. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a few in the chat, starting with Dan. I don't know if you saw. So there's Dan asked about other options, right? So like directory recursive or just in general options from the application standpoint.
So from the application standpoint, at this point, I mean, from the perspective of repo server, we don't care, right? So I mean, again, we fetch an artifact from somewhere, we unpack it, and then from there, the repo server does its own thing. So whether whether it's you can select the specific directory in the unpacked image, you can go recursively in the image. I mean, from that perspective, I mean, from the perspective.
The goal really is to provide the most straightforward experience from what current content. Basically, think of it as another way to source content, whether it be a Git repository, whether it be an OCI artifact. It shouldn't matter. It should be able to just render, or at least overlay content that you can then do whatever Argo does currently, whether it be directory recourse, whether it be templatize the Helm chart, you name it. Customize, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, like, in the end of the day, like once repo server pulls it from whatever source, it unpacks to directory. It's exactly the same thing from the perspective of repo server, so it doesn't really care.
Related question. So for users who are using OCI to package their manifests, has there been any established standard in the way like manifests should be organized? Or is it just raw YAML in a flat directory?
So the OCI standard does have a notion of a manifest and like and there are some standardized fields that the manifest has, and Argo CD does support this. Or like there's a bunch of annotations in the spec which we support, but there is a standard manifest.
Are you asking more? Are you asking more about how the content in the artifact could be
Like the file
formatted?
system.
Right.
Exactly.
What we're doing right now is we're just basically just tarring up a directory, and then that's going to be the content inside the OCI artifact.
Right.
So all Argo is going to do is just going to untar the content.
Okay.
Yeah, so then
I do know that Flux also supports OCI, but I wasn't sure if they were following some established
No,
convention.
they're kind of running their own as well. We're all kind of trailblazing this ourselves. So
yeah. So the thing is, like, OCI is kind of a free for all. So it's basically like, there's layers, there's like, you do whatever you want, and we've basically had to nail down. I mean, we do have metadata to where we can say like, okay, we can inspect the layers and say like, okay, this layer contains this content type, this layer contains that, and from there we restrict in the repo server that we only want gzip content in one layer, or a simple target layer in a single layer.
That's the meeting that I was on.
Zach, I'm gonna mute you.
Any more questions? I haven't actually looked at the chat.
Yeah, there's about multi-source app with values file references. So like I guess like the bulk of the question is the questions are like, how does OCI behave? I guess does this implementation behave like similarly with like Helm or Git, right? Like can we do similar things that we've been doing? I guess that's like Michael, unless I'm like misinterpreting your questions, right? Like I assume like you're asking about like if I have a tarball or like a OCI registry, but it has customized, like does that get respected, or can I use multi-source OCI? Do things like that get respected? It sounds like it does, but I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think multi-source is also something that's going to be a fun. I haven't looked so much into multi-source. I don't see why it shouldn't, but I also know that multi-source has been a source of interesting behaviors. That's definitely something we'd want to check before to see how OCI interacts with that.
Yeah, I feel like it based on what Andrew's saying about, at the end of the day, it's just files that get extracted onto the repo server. It should behave the same, but something to check.
I'll have one last demo. So basically, this also supports Helm charts, so OCI Helm charts, because it's it's basically a variant of the same thing where in OCI Helm, it's basically exactly what I showed, where it's a single layer having a tarball which gets extracted. So in practice, it's basically an alternative way of doing what has been done previously with Helm and setting the OCI type, but I can just show as a proof of concept that it also works with the new way of doing OCI. So got a public repo here, WordPress.
Good old WordPress.
Yeah, needed something. And boom, we get this with our sync. I'm sure the demo gods are gonna play something now just because. But yeah, boom. So that's so of course then the question becomes like, is this, how do we communicate? Should this be something that is communicated? I mean, from the discussions that came from yesterday, Michael, it would like at some point to deprecate the old style like Helm OCI, but that's for 4.0 beyond. But I think in the end, it's probably more consistent to like once this gets in to use this as the way for getting closer. Smart.
Right.
Don't have much more. I don't have anything
I-
beyond this demo. I didn't intend for this to be like, there's I mean, there are a few more things like as uh repository templates and such, but in general, this is basically the demo. I don't have any more to show beyond this, but would like to get thoughts, opinions.
I have a question about any performance impacts or limitations that you know of with OCIs. So with Git and Helm repositories, we had to do some caching tricks to reduce the burden that we would put onto the repositories. Like for example, with Git, we tried to do a lightweight ls remote to check like, oh, did anything change from the last time I talked to you? With Git, with HTTP, I think we check for like a 304 not modified response to see. With OCI, I'm wondering if there's some kind of equivalent.
So that's a good question. The short story is that index caching has not yet been implemented. It's something that needs to be done.
What you can do is you can look at the manifest and see if the manifest changes the SHA, and that will let you know if we might need to store or might want to be able to manage the manifest itself, the digest, pardon me, and then if we can just see it changes, well, obviously there's a diff, we should go ahead and pull it.
Yeah, I think
That doesn't require you to pull the entire artifact. It just needs you to just do a manifest check.
Right. So the check that we would want from an OCI repository is like, did anything new come up? And then with Helm, we would check if the index.yaml had a 304 response, I think, and so we avoided even fetching the index.yaml. Similarly with Git ls remote, we could tell if anything new got pushed.
So that's definitely something to do with index caching. That's something that still needs implementation, but for sure. It's because now basically like on each on each interval, it will just go directly to the remote and ask to check if the revision needs changing. So that's
Yeah, and it can be actually pretty aggressive. Like I think Argo CD reconciler assumed always at this point it was like it just reconciles early and often multiple times within the 3-minute cycle, like multiple times in a few seconds. So with a lot of apps, like we've noticed, it can hammer and really cause strain on the Git server.
Gerald.
Gerald, yeah, you had a question.
Yeah, one more kind of question, just more from a practice perspective. So this can be really useful for folks, and I know many of our customers fall in this bucket that don't have a Git production server, but they do have a registry that's in production with production SLAs, or you're deploying across different environments again where you don't have a Git server handy. But if you do have a Git server handy and it is production SLA and you have a registry, are there benefits to doing OCI versus doing the normal Git? Like for me, it seems like OCI is a nice feature to have, but if I have a Git server available, that's the way I'm going to go because you get a lot of other benefits out of that. But I'm curious, like if there are aspects in terms of benefits that I'm missing with the OCI approach.
I mean, the way I see it is like Git would be the default, right? I mean, I don't see this ever being supplanted by OCI. I mean, the use cases have been as your customers, or and some of our clients as well have been wanting to have like air gap solutions where it's not always possible to have Git, right? But if you have both, I mean, I would probably just stick with Git at this time.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks for the confirmation.
I
Yeah,
just
I
threw
would-
into the. Oh, sorry. I
Go-
was just gonna say I just threw into the chat the link to the proposal, which talks about some of the has a little bit of discussion about why people want to do it, and it is a popular pattern that people have been doing, and the ability to like sign an artifact and verify it cryptographically is nice. Like there's some nice things about it. And some people like to use it for tags, and a lot of people just have controls over pushing binaries, right? They're very used to having a lot of controls over pushing binaries, and they're not used to having controls over pushing Git. I want people to push to Git and have controls over pushing to Git, but just organizationally, it's just very, very common for people to have that kind of mindset. So it fits into a worldview that a lot of people already have. So having it as an option, I think, is really, really nice.
Yeah, and I like to add thank you, Dan, for the posting that. Just what Dan said, plus in terms of scale as well, I see I don't know if anyone else has run into issues with like rate limiting or like Git being able to keep up with a very, very busy system. And so OCI is in terms of scales I think scales out better than like HTTPS, but yeah, distributed Git as much common. So let's see here. Any questions? If there's
Michael had a good question about like some ranges on tags. Like, can you do something like we do with Helm, where you say like, oh, I want above 2.x, right?
Some are supported.
Right. Oh, it is supported.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've learned that OCI APIs are quite limiting, and it could be expensive to do that type of query on it. Basically, you have to download all the tags and then do your own filtering client side. Was that the case here?
Yeah, I have to remember how the implementation is, but
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, just for this, that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think when you get to a lot of tags, then I think you can also run into issues because basically it just keeps on growing and growing and growing.
I think there is. I have to revisit the implementation, but I think there is caching for this as well. But you'd have to fetch, though, for a given revision, you have to fetch all the tags, and then you have to process all the tags, and then you have to do some for comparison for that. So it does get it can get pricey if there are a load of tags.
So I have a question, unless someone else, I don't see the hands. That's why. So the question is around ORAS and um, and packaging up manifests, right? Or do you see? So originally, we discussed maybe adding something to the CLI, and then I think we abandoned that. I don't think we want to get that opinionated from on that aspect. But um, do you see us being opinionated in like how we package it? Um, do do you expect like do you see this as more like generic, like as long as it's generally in this format, it'll be fine, or like what's the idea behind
I
like
mean,
the
we,
CLI?
I mean, we are opinionated, right? I mean, we do enforce that there is, you know, we only allow one layer. There is a repo server option to be able to say like these are the content types which we support, and then if you do whatever crazy stuff with your specific content type, I mean, we don't really care, but as long as it's a single layer, and as long as the content type is in the list of allowed content types in the repo server, we don't really care per se. So it's really up to whoever wants to consume the OCI content. I mean, as for specific implementations, I mean, in theory, it's supposed to be standard, right? But in practice, I've already tested for. So I would like to test with the Builder and other OCI implementations to see that it's, you know, that it's, we're not inadvertently tying ourselves to the foot of ORAS. But,
Yeah, see, that's or like if we do end up with like further down the line, like more opinions, we should like maybe revisit having like a packaging.
I would like to have because I don't expect people to use auras, to be honest. I want us to be able to have
Yeah.
some sort of tooling within the CLI to provide that. We want to make this as easy and as approachable as possible, and we need to lower the barrier of entry.
Yeah, it's that's also the genesis of the separate but related feature of adding Argo CD CLI plugins.
Yep.
Yeah, I think um this is actually the genesis of that idea. Is I think like if we're gonna have an opinion, let's have a packaging mechanism. Like you said, like let's just make it brainless, right, for those. But we don't have to do it day one, right? It's just something to think about.
yeah, I think yeah, to add to Christian's, like I'm all for having something that's easy to use and package, but we don't want to bloat core Argo CD with a bunch of I mean, especially the CLI, and there's a bunch, I mean, the repo server is already pretty crazy. So it's always a kind of a tension between, you know, trying to throw in everything versus keeping it lean. So it's just kind of why I would much prefer. We'll see what the market says, right? I mean, if people, I mean, I suspect that, you know, I think ORAS is a great tool, I mean, great CLI, great library. If people use it in practice, I don't know. I guess we'll see what the wider public says.
All right, cool. Is there any other questions? Any comments here? Let me look at the chat. All right, I don't see anything else. All right, unless there's anything else or another agenda here, I move to close this meeting. Get some time back for everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, awesome.
Great
All right,
work.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Everyone.
Blake. Thank
Awesome.
you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Cal.
Awesome. Cheers.